This is a long anticipated video. Or at least that's what I tell myself. So, this is going to be me going over however many pages I can from the Gravity Falls journal. I'm going to go ahead and say that when Gravity Falls came out, it was really interesting to me because it had reminded me of this book that I had already been writing myself for a couple of years. That was about pretty much portals in the woods, to make a long story short, but I don't want to tell too much about that because I do want to eventually put something out revolving around that story I wrote. But also, Gravity Falls stuck out to me because I had already been studying CERN and different things like that since I was 7. So when Gravity Falls came out, I know exactly what it was talking about. In fact, you could really say it's just predictive programming pretty much, because that's all it really is. Or you could even say conditioning. Gravity Falls is pretty similar to The Simpsons because The Simpsons and Gravity Falls are both made by Freemasons, probably 33rd degree or higher, but both made by Freemasons who are really just telling you like their version or their sugar-coated version of revelations in the end times and the apocalypse and all that. In fact, I really could have said Futurama, but that's made by the same person as The Simpsons anyway. So all three of those are the same thing pretty much. Although The Simpsons is a little more, I would say it's less scary, and it's definitely less, I don't know, perverse than like Futurama, but yeah, so another thing, the Gravity Falls journals are pretty much like watered down versions of the Necronomicon. The Necronomicon is a book from, I guess I could say, Egypt or somewhere around Northeast Africa. It was written supposedly by somebody named H.P. Lovecraft, who was a Muslim or something like that, and they were Arabic. And it was a book about summoning different demonic hybrid creatures. And when the pagan Roman Catholic Church had robbed Egypt, the Library of Alexandria, where they had the books of the history of the world, the Catholic Church took all these books and put them in the Vatican Secret Library. So they have the original Necronomicon. I also believe that the Necronomicon was the book that John Ramirez, the ex-Satanist, was talking about when he said there was a book that he was able to get, but they took out the last 2 pages because they felt like he was changing on them. And only 2 other people in the world have the book. And I believe it was a Necronomicon, but of course it could be something else. And so, now I can start, I think. I think that said everything I was supposed to say. I'm going to be starting with Journal 3, and then eventually I'm going to do this book. So I have this labeled off as page 10, and I noticed that the door has a 13, and 13 means a lot of different things in the occult. And honestly, I couldn't really remember much about what it meant, but it means so many different things. And if you go on like one of the gematria websites, you could find a lot on there, I'm sure. But I wrote, portal door has number 13 on it, which is a significant number in the occult / gematria, which is a part of the occult. It's common to see a 13 tattoo on the face of those in the occult It stands for the 13th path of the Kabbalah. So like rappers will have 13 and other numbers tattooed on their face. It actually stands for the 22 paths of the Kabbalah. It also stands for bad luck and death, and a couple other things. And now, page 30 to 31. 30 to 31, or at least that's what I labeled the number off as for these two pages, is full of anagrams. And I'm sure if I had one of those green light things, I'd probably be able to like see some invisible ink. And then, of course, this is right here. On page 32, how Freemasons, well, wait a minute, is this the page? No, I guess this would be the page. I guess. Hold up, yeah, 30, okay. So, this kind of goes over something that's really common in history, how Freemasons are pretty much able to, like, rewrite history just like the pagan Roman Catholic Church did, which the Freemasons are a branch of the pagan Roman Catholic Church. They can just rewrite history and claim that they founded things that they really didn't. And that's how things went with what people call whitewashing, but I've honestly realized that white supremacy is deeper than people actually really think it is, and it's more tied in to the occult than just like some ethnicity or some quote-unquote skin color, because really I've never seen a white person anywhere. Just like with the black label. These pages also go over Freemasons rewriting history and how they claim they founded a town that they really didn't. And I know that Gravity Falls is actually based off of Oregon, an actual place, but I kind of feel like these pages are really, I guess, like, maybe, I don't know, mocking, satire, I don't know which one, but they could really go for how the whole U.S. and a lot of places were quote-unquote founded. So, page 34 to 35. Town. Okay, hold up. Okay, let me start over because I didn't read this full thing. 32 to 35, really. How Freemasons were able to claim finding a town when they didn't by scandals of weather control, assassination, and bloodline power. And the bloodline that they talk about in this show is the Northwest family. So there's Pacifica Northwest, and then I think Nathaniel Northwest, and a whole bunch of other Northwest. And actually, some months ago, I was looking on the map, and there is a place called Pacifica Northwest, or at least Pacifica, I can't really remember, in California. But I need to do more research on that. So yeah, these pages talk about how pretty much they caused the flood to kill all the lumberjacks. Okay, so now I'm going to try to read this to the best of my ability because I can't really read cursive, but I was actually able to read this book pretty well, though. In researching the town lore, I found quite a few bizarre laws and customs passed down from the founders' days. For example, an old law forbids a horse from holding office until it is of legal age to do what? These are also 46 different laws involving when, where, and how to properly court a woodpecker for marriage. And I think the joke there is with Christopher Columbus and how he was dating camels and things like that. I think that's what that really goes back to. Don't ask. Most of these absurd laws are attributed to town founder General Nathaniel Northwest, a man whose only battle skills appear to have been wearing a jacket with fingers. I think that's what that says. Fringes, oh my gosh. I can't really read cursive. I was like, wait a minute. I gotta figure out where I am. Somewhere over here. With fringes. Hold up. And posing for I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what this is. Due to this legend, Nathaniel's descendants, including current patriarch Alderman Northwest, have enormous power in this town, owning everything from Northwest Realty to Northwest Mud Flops to Northwest weather vanes that often seem to unfairly favor the directions north and west. It would seem that their power is unquestionable. However, a new piece of evidence throws the whole history of the Northwest family into an entirely different light. In my investigation, I recently made a discovery. Nathaniel Northwest may not be the founder of Gravity Falls. Imagine his entire family legacy of fraud. I believe the proof of this secret is buried somewhere in the enclosed document. If only I could crack the code. And, wait a minute. If I'm remembering right, this was the enclosed document. August 3rd. The strange document has proven indecipherable. Nonetheless, I believe its very existence is proof enough that the Northwest family history is a fraud. I traveled to Northwest Manor to confront Old Man Northwest with this evidence of his family's deceit, but instead was met by his naughty son, Preston, and his pet fox, Hunter. Not one in my... Well, hold on, let me skip some stuff. The great secret of the Great Flood. I followed the flood path back from Northwest Manor toward my own house and made a gruesome discovery. Countless lumberjacks died in the flood of '63, and all of them were under the Northwest employment, and it seems that many, if not most of their cadavers had washed up directly under my own porch 100 years before I was here. No wonder Northwest Realty sold this land to me at a discount. This property is built on a graveyard. And the funny thing about that is that a lot of the projects in hoods are built on graveyards. But anyway, which may explain why I have had so many recent sightings of zombies. But yeah, pretty much they flooded the land and killed a lot of the lumberjacks. That was the part I was really trying to get to. I probably should have just skipped a lot of stuff from the beginning, because I only have a few minutes of recording space. Okay, so like I've said before, the whole point of this show is really talking about CERN and how they're going to open up portals to break the veil and let demons and other things over and rip a hole in the space-time continuum. And also keep in mind, there aren't only portals at CERN. There's actually portals underground and above ground all over the world, but CERN is the one that they're willing to tell people about. There's even some of these at the Vatican that they've recently opened up, bringing in the year of Jubilees and letting out a lot of demons that have a lot to do with the coming famine and pestilence and different stuff like that, which I could link some videos to talk about that. But anyway, page 63 talks about dimension travel, refers to the occult as weirdness to manipulate ignorant kids and adults who don't fit in, which are 9 out of 10 anointed with the calling on their life. And I also mentioned on the side how DC and Marvel also push transhumanism. And also really what they're about is Anunnaki / fallen angel and demon hybrid worship. That's what one of the pages made me think of, but page 63, page 4 to 5, and page 12 to 13. And it also made me think about Matilda, because if you ever watched the Matilda movie, pretty much Matilda is a usual anointed person who also can be labeled as gifted, who gets dragged through a dysfunctional family system after being dragged through the CPS branch of the Cash for Kids system, and eventually she doesn't really understand why she's gifted or the calling on her life. So what she does is she goes to the library and she learns how to do witchcraft, and she gets into the occult, and then she's able to use witchcraft to get revenge on her teacher and other people. And that's the summary of Matilda. Oh yeah, and actually I forgot to say, not only was she a victim of the CPS branch of the Cash for Kids system, she was a victim of the school system branch of the Cash for Kids system, which also dragged her through the mud and took her through more trauma. But anyway, this is page 63. These pages are numbered, so you gotta go through and count. And oh yeah, so what Stanford, I think that was his name, what Stanford is calling all this occultic demonic stuff is the grand unified theory of weirdness. And he claims that pretty much he was trying to write a book to make some type of thesis that he was calling the grand unified theory of weirdness. But really, what they're trying to do is lure people into occultic doctrines and witchcraft and stuff, because the whole point of Disney was to get kids interested in witchcraft. But they're trying to do that while pretending that they don't know what it is and they're just calling it weirdness, to try to drag in these people who really don't know any of this stuff or understand any of this stuff. They're trying to drag them into participating in spells and different things like that, and summoning these different spirits and just thinking it's quote-unquote weirdness, which you can see here. And also here, and on another page, there's a full page about it. Stanford refers to the Lucifer pretty much talking to him in his head as a quote-unquote muse. He calls him my muse. And he also talks about how he's not superstitious on many pages and things like that, to try to make it seem like this isn't supernatural, it's just weirdness, or he's just crazy or something like that. And here's a My Muse page, but I'm not going to be going over this page till like later. I honestly should have wrote this down first, but I didn't. So this is page 4 to 5. Or maybe this is, no, I think this is it. This also talks about the whole grand unified theory of weirdness and how pretty much Gravity Falls is just a weird place that he wanted to visit to really understand why it's so weird and things like that. in page 10 to 12. 12 to 13. This is where he goes over himself and pretty much how he's anointed but doesn't know it. And he could, of course, be anointed for a bad reason, just like how Pharaoh was. You don't have to necessarily be anointed for a good reason. But either way, he was anointed, and people always thought he was weird. And of course, these days, they call it, well, they used to call it Asperger's. Now they call it high functioning autism and a whole bunch of other things. But he was anointed. People thought he was weird. He was smarter than everybody else. He made good grades. He wasn't really good at talking to people because no one really understood what he was talking about. It sounds like his family system was pretty normal, but I'd say he was definitely brought up in a Freemason bloodline or even Rh negative serpency bloodline because, for one, he was born with 6 fingers. And the Nephilim, the giants that were half female human, half fallen angel / annunaki, they had 6 fingers. That's another thing that stuck out to me when this show came out, because I was really interested in Nephilim and studying that a lot. And I was like, he's a hybrid. And the gene just finally came back out for him. And that's why he got 6 fingers, but his brother didn't. And his parents probably didn't either. So not only is he anointed for good or bad, but he also obviously has like a lot of stuff in his bloodline in general. And yes, so everybody bullied him and people make fun of him for having 6 fingers. Here shows all the A pluses. So yeah, he was anointed and didn't fit in, so he wanted to quote unquote study weirdness, as they're calling it, with his muse eventually, so he could prove himself to all the people that bullied him and become a millionaire, billionaire, something like that, after making the portal especially, so he could prove himself to everybody that bullied him, which is a common thing that anointed people, or people in general, fall into due to rejection. And this is my part 1.